Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Worst, a podcast where we analyse trilogies and decide which film is a terrorist with tiny feet. Joining me today...
I'm Luke, and I'm just a fly in the ointment, Greiner, just a monkey in the wrench.
I'm Conan, and I want to come out to the podcast, we'll get together, we'll have a few laughs.
Alright, so today, of course, we're talking about the Die Hard trilogy. We're only talking about the first three films today because we decided the other two that have been released just weren't worth our time at all. So to kick things off, I just wanted to slay the elephant in the room. We've decided that this is our Christmas movie, but I think there's a bit of debate on whether Die Hard truly is a Christmas movie. So, Luke, what do you think? Do you think Die Hard really counts as a Christmas movie?
Absolutely. It's the most Christmas movie there is. I had this debate with my wife the whole time, being like, this is like the best Christmas movie ever. It, like, especially number 1 and 2, the amount of references to Christmas, the Christmas music at the start and end of the movies, the setting, everything. There's no way you can deny that they're not Christmas movies. And even in the third one, when it's not Christmas, he makes a joke about Christmas. It's like, it's definitely Christmas movies.
Do you agree with Luke, Conan?
Yeah, because I had the same discussion with my wife. She was getting into the season and she wanted to start watching Christmas films. And I said, well, the best Christmas film then, Die Hard. I think, because it got me thinking, like, what is a Christmas film exactly? And it doesn't have the necessary appearance or the aesthetics of a Christmas film. Like, it's not snowing, it's not there's not Christmas trees everywhere. But in LA it doesn't snow at Christmas, so it's still Christmas there. But then I thought, what is a Christmas film? And I mean, it's a film all about a man who's had a hard year, he's had a hard go of life, and he comes together at one day of the year to make things right, to really think about what's worth it, to say how you feel. And it just happens to be German terrorists who are gonna be flies in said ointment. But in the end, he realizes what's important, and that's a big thing about the first Die Hard. He really does learn what's important through the magic of terrorism and Christmas, and he comes away a better man, thinking. And it would have never happened if there wasn't a Christmas party. So, I think if this isn't a Christmas film, what is a Christmas film? Is it just woolen coats and Christmas stockings, or is it all about telling your curly-haired wife that you love her?
I don't know. I think we could all take a page from the movie Elf. Christmas is about Christmas cheer. I don't think there's any Christmas cheer in these movies. As much as I love them, I don't think they're Christmas movies. There's no Christmas cheer.
What?
I don't think Bruce Willis is really a better man by the end of this movie. I mean, his relationship is clearly on the rocks in the second movie, and by the third movie is basically non-existent. I don't know.
Just because he learnt a lesson doesn't mean he can unforget the lesson. He still learnt a lesson in the first one. He's just a bit of a dick.
I thought their relationship was super strong in the second one. She's coming to see him, isn't she?
Yeah, I guess it's not too bad. He has to stay with her in-laws or something for a bit at the start, which is unpleasant.
But who doesn't hate that?
I guess they're getting along. Look, I'm happy to have it as a Christmas movie because I love this movie, but I don't know if it really counts as a Christmas movie.
It's fun for everyone.
Your kids watch this movie with you?
They will next year.
Yeah, like, I can see the debate. I can see why people don't think it's a Christmas film. It definitely, but I think it uses Christmas to enough of a sort of a narrative purpose, and it's the setting, and it does kind of infect every moment. Like, there's this awkward Christmas party, so John McClane's constantly at odds with it all, and yeah, even though it's not a Santa Claus child, wishing his parents away and then realizing he has to fight intruders. Yeah, well, he does have to fight intruders, but actually kills these ones. And it's got that. I really feel like it has the flavor of an LA Christmas, and it's a very clever subversion of a lot of it, but I think it achieves a lot of what a Christmas movie sets out to do.
I must say, I did enjoy at the end of the first movie where there's no snow falling in what would be normally a snowy scene, but there's all the papers falling from the building somehow. They're not on fire because of the giant explosion or anything. They're just falling as though they're snow. I did enjoy that. Maybe we can relate to it a bit more because we're Australian and we don't get snow at Christmas either.
Exactly.
Yep.
We just shoot terrorists.
We get falling ash from the sky from bushfires, which is
from fires. Exactly.
Strangely magical, I guess.
We all wear wife beaters in summer. We relate to John McClane. So.
All right, so guys, the Die Hard trilogy. How did you guys feel about it as a whole?
Yeah, I really like it. I'm trying to think. I got into them when I sort of started getting into film early on. So back in high school, when I was religiously combing through the IMDb top 100 at the time, and the first Die Hard's in there, and obviously it's a film out everyone knows, everyone's heard of. It's what sort of made Bruce Willis. Um, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like smarter than your average action flick. It's more entertaining than your average thriller. It is pulpy, but not pulpy. I don't know. It really sort of does ride that sweet spot between just complete mindless entertainment and actually very clever, solid, like a solid film. It's smart. It's got really good character development, which I actually forgot about. But rewatching it, it does have a solid character arc and everything. I think a lot of that's probably based off the novel that I didn't realize was written on it. But and then watching number three is such a good film. They're a lot of fun. They just
Spoilers.
that there's a third one.
No, that you're giving away the movie you don't like.
Oh, whoops.
It's all right.
I like number two. I actually like number two more this time than I did when I first saw it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Luke, the trilogy, how did you feel about it as a whole?
I really enjoyed it. Like, it was good watching them again. I feel like it's honestly been. I feel like I haven't watched these films in maybe 10 years since I was in high school. When I watched them all, and I watched number 4 and everything like that. They're just fun films. My wife and I watched them together. She'd never watched 2 and 3. They're very fun films. Some more fun than the others, but yeah, they're good. They're good films. They sort of have like a nostalgia thing for me as well. And yeah, nothing better to watch come December every year.
Yeah, we've adopted Die Hard as a bit of a Christmas movie in our family, even though I just had a complaint about it not being a Christmas movie. We still end up watching it every year. And I don't know, John McClane's just such a fun character, such a good everyman action hero. These movies really kicked that trope off. Like before this, all you had was Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger playing all your action heroes. And here
Larger
we've got
than life, and yeah,
just impossible body images for us to follow. And here we've got John McClane and his wife beater with a bit of a beer belly.
yeah,
crawling around in vents and getting dirty.
It really does a great job how weak not weak, but how vulnerable he is and how out of his depth he is. He's never really in control. He's never he's always got a plan. He's always wily, but he's never he's never hunting. He's always sort of the hunted turning the tables. And it makes for so much entertainment. It's like Tom and Jerry in real life.
Yeah, he's always really turning the tables, and he never quite has the upper hand he hoped he'd have. And just I don't know, so many clever things in the first movie too, like just the lack of shoes. Like it just seems like just such a small thing, but it's such a good like Achilles heel to your hero.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do that like from the start, and he's the first person he kills, he's looking for shoes, and he says that great quote about the small feet and everything. And then it does play a major part, it messes him up. Like
Yeah, with that it's kind of like when you think about writing a plot and you go, okay, how much plot armor can I put on here? How much can I stretch logic and just hope no one notices? Where it never feels like that in this. There probably are some plot holes, but it does feel like they've thought about every sort of moment. And like, even when he goes into a certain room, that sort of thought, okay, what would be in this room? What could he use? What would be the most clever way of getting out of this? And yeah, it makes it so unique.
Yeah, so for me, something I think the best Die Hard movies embody is that they have John McClane being a clever, wisecracking hero, but they also have a really strong villain. Do you guys agree? When Die Hard's at its best, the villain is very strong.
Yeah, and some of them succeed in that.
Yeah, well, certainly there are Die Hard movies that have weaker villains, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But particularly Alan Rickman, just
So
chewing
good.
up scenery in that first movie. He's just so good.
So good. Even before he said anything, like he walks in, and I was just like, man, Alan Rickman's so good. Like this movie, I love him.
He does have that sort of that older man charm of like, because obviously he got into acting very late in life, and he does sort of have that suave about him that says, he's a real person. He's seen a lot of life. He's brought experience to this. Same when you get like the guy who played the Onion Knight in Game of Thrones, and even to a lesser extent Gerard Butler. Sort of they all had careers before they were movie stars, and there's just a real sort of like sense of these are real people, and they just bring so much gravitas to the performance. And Rickman really, really runs with that in this film.
Yeah, it's definitely the runaway performance of this movie, in my opinion. As good as Bruce Willis is, and I know it's his sort of first big role as well. I don't know, Alan Rickman just
He
steals the show
steals
every
every
scene he's in.
scene that he's in. And that's the thing, I love just the little things. And I'm sure back then, it's different looking back now, but I'm sure back then it was sort of very pop culture referencing, like with Time magazine and Forbes and everything like that. But I feel like I like, him bringing that up, like, oh, I must have missed 60 minutes. Like, what do you mean? Or I read it in Forbes magazine. It's like, I don't know. It's cool. It's a cool different thing for a villain to.
The advantages of a classical education.
Yeah. And the thing with the suits, like I have to do myself.
So this movie was handed around to quite a lot of actors. What do you guys think about some of these other possible replacements for Bruce Willis? So according to this list, we've got Arnold Schwarzenegger, Robert De Niro, Harrison Ford, Kurt Russell, Al Pacino, Sylvester Stallone, Burt Reynolds, Mel Gibson. Do you feel like any of those could fill this role the way that Bruce Willis did?
There's two of those I could have seen. I could see Kurt Russell doing it, and I could see Mel Gibson doing it. I can't see anyone else. I think Kurt Russell's like the great undersung performer of our generation. He's just such a great actor, and he does have sort of an everyday feel about him. And Mel Gibson, I mean, he might be too movie star, but I love Mel Gibson as an actor. he just brings, his performances are always fantastic. And I mean, obviously he has Lethal Weapon, and you see it in Lethal Weapon where he is just kind of a lot more crazy and sort of wildcat in that, but he does sort of bring that disgruntled, burned out cop he's not overly muscly, he's not a superhero, he's living in a trailer. So he could have brought just that really sort of like washed up feel to it, I think.
Do you think Kurt Russell has the comedy chops to pull off the one-liners though?
Yeah, it probably would have looked different.
Not on the level of Bruce Willis. I think, honestly, I would have liked Kurt Russell, but out of them, the only person I can see doing this role with justice would have been Harrison Ford, had he not already been Indiana Jones. Like, if there's no Indy, then I think Harrison Ford slots in here good. But yeah, too similar.
I think at this point in time, he would have had way too much baggage with him. It would have been weird to see.
You disagree, Greiner?
I think Harrison Ford's too suave for this character. Like, just I don't know. I feel like Bruce Willis is just like he's grabbing at every chance he gets, but he's not cool and calm. He's there and he's making the best of what he's got, but he's not cool and calm like Harrison Ford is as both Han Solo or Indiana Jones.
There is a difference between them. Yeah, they're both in over their head, but yeah, one of them's definitely cool and confident, while the other one's
But now imagine Mad Max running in with a sawn off, shooting Hans Gruber.
I had to consider Mel Gibson, but then I thought, what about Mad Max for Mel Gibson? And maybe
because he's got, especially Mad Max 2, Mel Gibson has the very dry sort of observational wit that Bruce Willis has, particularly in the first one, where even that his jokes aren't necessarily like over the top funny jokes. They're just kind of, they're astute comments on what he sees around him. And Mel Gibson definitely brings that in Mad Max 2. So I would have liked to see that in an alternate timeline.
I'm happy with the timeline we got, though.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Let's decide. Do these movies deserve to be a trilogy? Do we deserve a Die Hard trilogy? Would it be better as a single film, a series? Luke, what do you think?
So it's sort of similar to our point on Indiana Jones. I think this it very much suits with the whole terrorist of the week vibe with these films. It can outstay its welcome, and I think it did after 3 of them. But I definitely think like these films, they're separate enough, and you can keep bringing up new scenarios, and it's like, oh, what's he gotten himself into now? Like, oh, now one's got a vendetta against him. I think it very much lends to that. Not necessarily a trilogy, but definitely, worth having more than one.
What do you think, Conan?
It's tough. Because in one hand, you're right. It definitely lends itself to a franchise model of it's like any sort of old noir film or any sort of detective series. You've got a central character who always works when he's in over his head in some situation. And so you can have just like 3, 5, 10 Die Hard films. And they kind of follow that model of, obviously with Die Hard 4.0, which is a terrible title. I don't know why they ever did that. The terrorist is like a cyber terrorist. And it's like, oh yeah, this is our culture now. And Die Hard 2 especially really feels like it's sort of ingrained in that 90s sort of like a displaced foreign army, soldiers who are jaded with the West and what they've sort of done. So they're all placed in their period of production. But I don't know. I feel like there's more bad Die Hard films than there are good Die Hard films. So I don't know if the model, like as much as I love the character of John McClane,
now there is, I think.
yeah. But I don't know how much
Yeah.
the model of the character of John McClane can sort of remain until it's just like we're saying. The first one feels like a subversion of a lot of stuff, and it's really charming because of that. And then Die Hard 3 is a buddy cop Die Hard, and that works. But outside of that, I don't know if it really does hold up for very long, unfortunately.
I think I agree. Maybe I would be just happy with one movie. Like the first film is just such a perfect piece of cinema to me. Like perfect action film anyway. Just hit. There's just not a bad scene in that movie. And you're right. There is more bad Die Hard movies than there is good ones. And I think, like I said, there needs to be a clever bad guy, and I think that becomes hard to do, hard to keep up for a trilogy. And then how many times is this guy going to get himself into these situations? Because he, like you say, he's not out actively seeking these things. He's very much I don't know. He's there, and he's the only one that can do it. And he's got a heart of gold. Like he's saving the guys that he doesn't even like, but he just wants to save people and help people and make sure the bad guys don't win. But how many times can someone get into that situation? Just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think that's why the third one works so well because it has that connection to it, and so it makes sense that he'd be sprung into that situation again. Whereas the other ones, yeah, it is a lot more just he's kind of there and he's like, I guess I'll reluctantly do this, but you're right. After a while, it's like, how unlucky must you be to just constantly fall under a super terrorist's grip?
There's only so many times you can be at the wrong place at the wrong time. So
yeah, and then it just becomes, you start riding motorcycles and helicopters.
What if Bruce Willis is the wrong place and the wrong time? What if he's the problem in these movies? We just haven't got far enough to explore that yet.
I think he was at the wrong place at the wrong time after 3. So
yeah, I think he is the problem in his own career now. That's for sure.
He does seem very tired now, which is unfortunate. But
Die Hard 7, so very tired.
So, which I mean, it seems pretty obvious from what we've said, but the only person I haven't heard from is Luke. What's the worst movie? Which film in this trilogy gets the wooden spoon?
I had this thought going into it, and it sort of was reaffirmed watching them again. It's Die Hard 2, in my opinion.
Without a doubt.
So basically, my little notes that I've put down on it for my reasoning, I don't think the setting is as interesting as number 1. Like, it doesn't have like an iconic thing like Nakatomi Plaza, or the whole thing with 3, the whole Simon Says thing around the city and everything. It doesn't have an interesting setting. The villains aren't interesting in number 2, and I think that's one of its major flaws. Like, the most interesting thing about the villain in number 2 is the naked aerobics to start the film, and that he aims the remote like a gun at the TV, and from there it's all downhill. So that's the most interesting quality. So, and I found the ending anticlimactic. Like, I knew that was how it ended, like with the trail and the fire. But it felt like, I don't know, it felt like it came too soon, but the movie dragged on too long. It was a weird mix of it where it felt like it was their first interaction of them fighting, and then he falls off, and then, okay, boom, now they're all blown up. So, yeah, I don't know, it felt sort of anticlimactic.
Number 2 is definitely the worst. I think, I like that they tried to, again, do the sort of like the bottleneck film model where he's in one place one time. So they tried to do it with the airport, but it didn't work nearly as well. As much as I love seeing Dennis Franz and a young John Leguizamo, he's in there for like one scene. It's great.
Yeah.
There's all these little sort of like bizarre cameos like that. They're fun, but you're right. It really feels like it's like a bad sequel. It's just trying to do what the first one did, but it's doing a poor effort to imitate it. And I don't know, the thing that really struck me this time about it, as like I briefly mentioned before, is it feels really dated. The other two feel a lot more timeless, in that they just feel like general 20th century films. Number 2, there's so many scenes that are reminding us that it's the 90s. Like, John McClane doesn't use technology. And so Bonnie Bedelia says, it's the 90s, John, you got to start doing this. He said at another point, yeah, it's the 90s. Someone else says, welcome to the 90s. It's really plugging that idea that this is like the future now at the time, which is weird. And then
Look at this fax machine.
it's kind of like that's just like this is the real enemy now. These machines, but it had that weird thing where the villains are this, like I mentioned before, this displaced army rather. Like Lethal Weapon 2 sort of had a similar thing where the I think it was South African diplomats were kind of like doing criminal things, and it was this weird like almost xenophobic but not really. And then the Dirty Harry, I think was the third one, had a similar thing where it's like this weird sort of foreign group are operating legally in the country, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's just this weird spate of villains like that where they were foreign armies, but they were also with the help of America, and it was kind of like, I guess, reflective of this, that 90s sort of anxiety of like, is Western American capitalism and exceptionalism failing because all these villains are motivated by their hate for that. And it just feels very, very specific to that time in history.
Yeah, I feel like they could have done something with that though, but it was just, they didn't even, like they mentioned, like obviously they talk about how they're ex-military and all this sort of stuff, but they don't have any real goal. They don't have any real ethos that they live by or anything like that. They don't have any real thing that's caused them to be disillusioned in the American government. Like they've decided they want to help out this Mexican cartel dude, and that's their story. Like there's no.
They mention it briefly. They're like, he's the only one who's going to stop communism, and it's just kind of that weird like, okay, I guess. It's, yeah, you're right. It's a weird sort of abstract motivation that it feels like they sort of said, yeah, people were scared about that, right? So
yeah, it feels like more just like a generic staple than any depth to it at all. Like there's no real motivation behind it.
Yeah, it's interesting going into this. I had a quick look at like the Rotten Tomatoes reviews, and Die Hard 1, obviously, like a classic, 94%. Die Hard 2, 69%. Die Hard 3, 59%.
Whoa.
Rotten Tomatoes is. We need to stop using that as a metric.
See, I didn't check this time, and I'm very surprised at that.
But see, even Metacritic agrees. Metacritic has them basically the same numbers. Roger Ebert infamously gave Die Hard 1 1.5, where he enjoyed Die Hard 2 a lot more.
I did have that in my notes here.
It just...
We need to throw his opinion out.
It boggles my mind that people thought this movie was in anywhere near as good as Die Hard 1. Like, it just falls flat in so many ways.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Wow. That blows my mind. That's definitely not how I would rate them at all. Obviously, apart from, like, first one's great. I can't believe he gave it a 1.5 star.
And even the box office, like Die Hard 2, doing a lot better than Die Hard 1, which is kind of expected with the sequel, but Die Hard 3 drops off a bit more again. Like, it's strange that looking back, everybody seemed to think Die Hard 2 was a good film, but it just, to me, it doesn't embody what's really good about Die Hard 1. Like, it doesn't have a really cool villain that's interesting and that you want to see more of. I think it does an okay job at giving you a sense of place. Something I really love about Die Hard 1 is there's such a sense of place at the Nakatomi Plaza. Like, he runs past the pictures on the wall and gives him a kiss all the time, and the elevator shafts, like, and he gets the rooftop. Like, there's very much a sense of place and a sense of where he is in the building, and he doubles back on himself all these times and stuff like that. I think number 2 does okay job at that. Like, he's underground in the tunnels with the janitor, and he's showing him around these secret exits up to the runway and stuff like that. Like, I think that's okay. I don't think it's terrible, but it's not amazing.
But yeah, no, I agree. Definitely with number 1. Like, I love that aspect. Like, what was Hans doing in that room? Like, I'm going to go to that room. It feels very video gamey. Like, I'm going to backtrack to that area and figure out what's going on. And I love that sort of aspect of it.
Yeah. Nakatomi Plaza is like synonymous with cool locations because it does feel like a real place. It's sort of, like I said, half of it is under construction, but half of it's also sort of ready to use rooms. So it just feels really, really unique. And every scene has a nice vibe to it. Whereas airports, like, no one likes airports. You can't make airports fun.
And then even Die Hard 3, like, New York is that place.
Yeah.
I think if you are like someone from there who has a connection with New York, that's probably a lot more like you feel it a lot more than I do, not knowing anything about New York. But you can definitely feel the characters know this place, and they're talking about, oh, they're taking this road, and it's going to lead to this underground and all this sort
Yeah.
of stuff.
Like,
I love
we
that
can't
stuff,
make it
though.
in that time. We need to, this is the street to go down. Like,
We
it's,
got to cut through Central
Yeah.
Park.
Literally drive through the park. I love that. Yeah, I love sort of. I feel like I'm just a movie watcher. I know New York to some extent of like how movies
Yeah.
know New York, and so I just love those things. I love that idea where characters just know a city so well, and they know the little secret spots, and they love what street marks the end of this sort of this cult, this like ethnic group, and what street starts another. Like, it makes it feel like a real place.
Maybe that's because it is a real place.
Says you. I've never been there.
True. None of us have ever been to New York, I don't think.
The Great New York Conspiracy.
Number 2 is very much try hard instead of die hard. That's a good. It's like the quotes are way more cheesy instead of actually being witty. I feel like it's very much more Hollywood blockbuster cheesy lines. Feel like, I mean, you can't top him in the first one being like, "I'm going to cook you and I'm going to eat you," as he's punching the crap out of some dude. That's just a great line. Like, you don't hear that usually, but yeah.
Yeah, I think 'cause number 2, I remember I made a note about it as well. There seems to be a lot more sort of him as a like he's much more of an obvious womanizer, like how he's faxing through the things back to LA, and the stewardess or the concierge is like, "Hey, I get off in an hour. Let's get a drink."
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know. I mean, I guess Bruce Willis is good looking, but it's just like it really sort of plugs. I felt like there was a lot more of a focus on he is like. Not only is he the best warrior in the room, he's also the funniest guy and he's also the sexiest guy. Whereas in the first one, it's kind of like he sticks out. And so people are kind of like curious about him, where he's not so much as like, wow, look at this hunk of masculinity. He's just kind of like so confident. He's like, I am who I am. I don't know. It felt a bit more like with Indiana Jones, people were sort of writing what they thought John McClane was rather than writing John McClane.
There was some decent scenes in 2, though. I just want to point those out. So killing the guy with the icicle. So when they're having a bit of a fight outside the church, and he grabs an icicle off the side of the church and stabs him in the eye with it. That's a pretty cool kill.
It's like one of the things. Like when I think Die Hard 2, that's like actually like one of the first 2 things I think of is the icicle kill. So yeah, it's definitely memorable.
What's the other thing?
Is the airplane where he throws the lighter. Like obviously, but
makes sense.
Not much else.
Bit of an undeserved kill in that one, but still cool.
Still only counts as one.
There's just a lot of holes in number 2 too. Like he goes into he's trying to prove to them that the army team are bad guys with their blank shots. So he goes into a police station, pushes the police chief back, and shoots at him with blanks and a gun. Like there's no way he walks out of that.
And everyone just ducks.
Alive.
Everyone ducks. Like, oh god. Yeah, no.
Like in a room full of policemen, if you're gunning someone down, it's just not going to end well for you.
Yeah,
but
everyone's got.
I don't know. It is airport. It is airport police. It is airport police. But I tell you what, I don't know. There is something about that scene that's just so chaotic. He pulls out and just starts firing. He scares the crap out of that dude. That dude like has to take his aim. He's like grabs the phone, like okay. He's like shaking up. I thought it was hilarious. But I straight away had the same thought. I was like, "There's no way he's surviving that."
Yeah,
it's the most unrealistic survival of the whole trilogy.
That and the I thought the ejection from the airplane was kind of dumb.
Oh man, and just like the look of it, of him just like looking back, oh crap, and then just flies off screen. It just cracked us up.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. He has this weird monologue at some point too, where he's like, elevator, basement, same crap happened to the same guy twice. Like it's just a super weird, self-knowing. I know what they're kind of going for, kind of breaking the fourth wall, but it really is a movie that just tries to follow the tropes of the first one, and they're kind of pointing it out. It's just seems like lazy writing to me.
They're ripping on themselves, and it comes across like, yeah, I know it's a detriment. It's not a thing to brag about. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking.
So clearly, number 2 is our worst film. Who's to blame for why this film failed? Luke, what do you think?
I have the answer. So, Marvin is to blame. What a horrible character. I hate Marvin. With a passion. I hate Marvin with a passion.
What did he do to you?
Get him the hell out of there. He's not our pal. He's not our pal. He's nobody. He's annoying. His little like lines like I'll give you $20 for it. It's just not. It's not funny. He just and he just comes out of nowhere. Like go back to your hole. It's just I don't know. He's just weird, and then I don't think it's deserving. Like at the end, he drives them off. He's like, "Oh, hello, Mrs. McLean. I'm Marvin. Hop on the back. Oh, this is great. What a Christmas it's been." It's like, go away. You're not funny. I don't like Marvin at all, and I think he's solely to blame why I dislike Die Hard 2 the most.
Yeah. I
Conan?
don't know how I can follow that. Such hatred. I think Marvin is. I don't like Al. I think he is such. I forgot that he was even in this film from the first one. He's such a bland character. I don't get why. He's fun as just like he's a good sturdy friend. He's the kind of guy you want because he's just he'd never leave you for anyone else. But he's so uninteresting, and I'm like every time him and John talk, I'm like I don't even know if John would care about this guy. I feel like he just yeah. So I think Marvin's at least unique.
Yeah, I think the whole subplot in the first one of Al not wanting to discharge his gun anymore because he accidentally shot a kid, and then the whole reveal at the end that he shoots down the final bad guy, and that being some moment we're all supposed to cheer about, it just feels really weird to me.
It's very cheesy, and I don't know if that's like because back then it wasn't cheesy, but now it definitely comes across like it's a very much cheesy moment where a guy gets over his fear, and it's such a cliche of like I shot a kid, and it's like okay, well, Jesus,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like the most basic thing you could think of, but yeah.
But you're right, it hasn't aged well. It's like this guy's struggling with this killing a kid, and it's like, no, good. He overcame that fear, and he's happy to kill again. It's like, yeah, I don't know if that's great, but yeah, look, in the 80s, people were happy at killing. It was a simpler time. You could just die, and it wasn't an issue. Look, as is always the case, I think the blame falls squarely on the director. So if we look at Die Hard 2, directed by the lovable Finnish director Rennie Harlin, who brought you other such great films as Devil's Pass, Exorcist: The Beginning, Mindhunters, Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger's a good film. I'll go to that. Cliffhanger.
There's that, and then it's just outside of that. The Long Kiss Goodnight and Deep Blue Sea, both pretty bad but successful 90s films. Look, I think his track record speaks for it. He doesn't. Oh, and he did The Legend of Hercules, the terrible 2014 version. I don't think he's good.
Who can keep up with John McTiernan though, as a director of an 80s 90s action film?
It's true, an unsung 80s hero. But imagine if he had done all three.
It's true. It would have been a better film. I think the writing's weak though in number 2 as well. I don't think you can just blame the director.
Yeah, because
I think
just even looking at the one-liners, it's such a drop in quality.
The writing's responsible for the one-liners. The writing's responsible for the actions of the bad guys and them not being particularly interesting. Like I don't think you can blame the director for that.
I blame Rennie Harlin 110%.
All right, you just either love or hate directors, don't you? There's no in between.
There's no in between.
Okay, it's the director and Marvin.
Leave Marvin alone. Sorry, I'm just looking at the writing credits here. So Die Hard 2 was Stephen D'Souza and Doug Richardson. Number 1 was Stephen D'Souza and Jeb Stewart. So are we to blame Doug Richardson, you reckon?
I mean, even the whole thing with the journalist at the end where she blocks the camera shot and he's like, oh, isn't that nice? And she's like, yes, it is. Like, just appreciate this beautiful humanity moment. It's like, it's super, super cheesy.
Yeah. What about the taser? What about Chekhov's taser at the start? They show the taser right at the start of the movie, and she uses it at the end.
As soon as that happened, my wife was like, "Well, that's going to come into play later." I was like, "Yeah."
Did they allow tasers like that on planes? Like they just
beam
electricity like that?
That's the other thing that hasn't aged well about this movie, though, right? Like airports are a lot more secure now than they were in 1995 or whenever it is, 1990.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it was 1990. Yeah, because there was only 2 years between 1 and 2, and then 5 years before number 3. So
yeah, a bit of a hiatus.
I mean, any movie before September 11 has a very different view on airports, but
Sure.
I do think it's interesting. Like, I do like the whole aspect of, shutting down the airport and all these planes just circling the sky, running out of fuel slowly. I think that is a cool, like villain plot point. But I don't feel like it ever really feels like they're at danger in a way. I don't know, but it is cool.
Yeah, it adds tension to it, definitely. And obviously having his wife there sort of makes it real.
I really enjoyed his reaction to the first plane crashing, like how just devastated he was that he couldn't save those people. Like, I do think that was a nice touch. I do think that was very John McClane.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was a good touch. I thought that was how that should have been handled, but yeah, the rest of the film doesn't quite live up to that. So all three of these movies are based on books. This one's based on a book called 58 Minutes or something like that, which is how long the plane's got worth of fuel before it's going to crash. And it's interesting. They're all based on books that aren't related to each other, but they've all been shoehorned into John McClane's life.
I didn't know that. I knew the first one was based on a book, but
yeah, no, I was just looking at it. Yeah, it seems like he's just kind of become the just the generic detective sort of action hero that just any pulp thriller or any pulp novel, they're just like, yeah, that'll work.
So, guys, is there anyone who you think deserved better? Like, is there anyone that acted their way through this movie okay, despite the writing?
Dennis Franz. That man is a national treasure, and I think he brings such a great sort of just bumbling sort of like, everyone's most hated detective. He's just only in the way, but he's like, I'm the law here. But everyone knows that the law doesn't count when John McClane's in the room. And he's awesome. I just love seeing him. He's just got the terrible mustache and the terrible sort of like long receding hair. Everything about him just like he's the guy you love to hate. I think he's awesome.
Yeah,
really, I didn't enjoy his character at all.
But I
that doesn't speak to his acting skills, though. I guess does it?
Yeah.
No, I didn't enjoy him because I thought he was like, I didn't like the character, not because of his performance, but he's a bit of a dick, so I don't like his character. I just want him to listen to John McClane. As far as who deserved better, I only did put down in my notes that Al Powell deserves better, but I won't go in there, Conan.
He deserves to not exist.
But I do like so Fred Dalton Thompson, who plays the airport like owner Trudeau. I like him. I feel like he's a good actor, and he adds sort of weight to his scenes. Like he's believable in that role. I only ever picture him as like the Baby's Day Out cop, and this role, so that's all I associate him with. And I feel like obviously at the time it wasn't really known, but Robert Patrick, I think, could have been used a lot more. And when I saw him at the start, I completely forgot he was in it. And when I saw him on the elevator, I was like, "Oh, awesome! That's going to go." And then he's like the first one killed with like, the vent just falls on him. He gets shot up. He doesn't do anything. I'm like, "Oh, that's a shame." He could have been interesting.
Yeah,
but
like a lot of sort of like early those guys actors, like Robert Patrick's in there. Like I said, John Leguizamo. It's got Franco Nero. I forgot that he was the villain. So obviously the original Django. Like it's got a surprisingly sort of big cast that I guess weren't that big at the time. And so I mean, I think John Leguizamo's a great actor. In this, I only remember him literally. He sprays bullets out a window, so you can only make that so good. But if he was Marvin, is it a better film?
Yes, if anyone else was Marvin.
Marvin was a very strange character.
Thank you.
Greiner, who do you think?
I don't know. I appreciate William Atherton, like the reporter, this scummy guy who's just in it for his own.
Thornburg.
He was enjoyable in both movies, I thought, as just a real scummy dude that you'd love to hate, I guess.
I wanted a cameo in the third one. I was waiting.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing. He wasn't
even
in there.
Just like on a report that he was trying to get a story and got shot, something or like, I don't know. But I enjoyed his role. Like, he plays that role perfectly in both of them. He's like he's telling his story in the bathroom stall and like, I'm putting my life on the line for this. And it's like, it's great. And he's that perfect slimy journalist reporter that will sell his soul for, a slot on TV. It's great.
I have a theory about him in the first one, but we'll get to it.
Yeah, all right. I have some feelings about the slimy characters in the first one. Him and Hartbockner could have a slime off. Both
See,
just
maybe he
terrible.
died out in the snow. He got tased and he's just laying there. The old lady walked over him. Maybe he just died there, and that's the end of him
It's another body for the count.
for that old lady.
All right. So how can we fix this movie? Is there anything we can do to make it better, other than get a new writer and get a new cast?
So, my quick notes on the quick fix. Obviously, we've already sort of covered it. They needed to have a more interesting villain, which is going to be a hard thing to do after you have Hans Gruber with Alan Rickman. It's a very hard thing to follow, but it wasn't even like he was a good villain. So it was the opposite of Hans Gruber. It was a pretty bad villain as far as I'm concerned. And they should have just removed Marvin completely, just had John McClane kill him. And that would have fixed the movie, in my opinion. Conan.
I think Marvin should have been an undercover cop who actually saves John McClane.
He should have been McClane in number 3. He's like, oh man, now it's up to me.
Die Hard, the Marvin story.
I'll give you 20,000 this gold bar.
Man, what is your beef? No, I'm not sure. It really does suffer from, like, the first one doesn't leave much to follow on with, so it really is just like we have to make a whole new story from this. And when it is literally a guy who's in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing that again just is gonna feel weird. The way to fix number 2 is with number 3. Like, number 3 is the fix that they saw. They offset. They used
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, they offset it with someone else to sort of give a different dynamic between, instead of John and Holly, it was now John and this other guy. They explore some sort of deeper issues, and they have a reason for the villain to be in there and to be good. Whereas the second one does just feel like the action franchise sort of version of that, where they're just like, we're making another one for the new year. And I don't know how you make that good.
It doesn't feel different enough from number 1, and that's what number 3 does. So I feel like even if they were swapped in order, it would fix that problem, because it mixes it up a bit, and then maybe he goes back to a traditional thing, like, oh, he's stuck in another place again. But doing that right, 2 years after number 1, it doesn't mix it up too much.
I think it's just nowhere near as bad of a movie if there's a good villain. There's a better villain and better writing around, like, John and his one-liners and his motivation. Like, I think it's actually an okay movie then. Like, I think the setting's good. I think, like, the whole double cross with the special ops guys and the blank rounds, like, I think that's all kind of clever and enjoyable. And, like, I think most of the kills and stuff, like the action scenes, are pretty good as well. But yeah, it just really suffers from not having an interesting villain and not being very well written in terms of one-liners and that sort of thing.
You're probably right. Can you give me your 30-second pitch for a good villain to fix it?
Oh, it's hard. Like, Hans Gruber is so good, and, like, they do an okay job in number 3. Like, I think Jeremy Irons is good, but I don't think he's as good as.
He's awesome. I think
it's the villain isn't as good as Hans Gruber though.
No.
What's his name? James Gruber. I can't remember what his name is.
Simon.
No, but he was born something Simon Gruber. Anyway.
Peter?
Yeah, Peter sounds right.
Yeah. Nah. I don't know. Do you go back to the well of the German? Do you do his other brother or his cousin or something? Like, I don't know.
The whole Gruber clan.
Ellis's brother. Back.
Which one's Ellis?
Ellis
Hans.
Yeah,
Bobby.
The junkie.
Hans. Booby. I'm your white knight.
We'll go into that when we talk about Die 1. He's so good.
Yeah,
I love it.
He is so good. Yeah, I actually don't. I think ex-military guys is okay. They just needed more. They needed more motivation for a start. Like, they just don't have any motivation. We're bad.
Communism,
people.
Man.
Communism's bad.
Yep.
They needed a better motivation, and it needed to be interesting.
I think having something like the Joker in there, but obviously not calling him the Joker, but just having this guy who brings complete sort of chaos to it, because that'd be kind of nice. Where obviously the first one has they're in there to just to steal money. It's like, okay, they've got a purpose, and so John McClane sort of figures that out. It's like, okay, I can beat you by stopping that or whatever. Whereas then when you've got someone who's just there, like I'm just destroying stuff. There is potential for kind of like John McClane can't bring his order to it, and he's trying to be like, how do I stop someone who just doesn't care, who has no motivation? But
I like that. There is no plan. Like the villain doesn't have a plan. He's just causing chaos. So how can you get in front of his plan when he doesn't have one? I like that. I think that would have helped. Should be a director.
Well, I pitched that to Christopher Nolan a few years ago, and here we are.
Well, we've given number 2 a lot of time. What about number 3? How do you guys feel about number 3? Since I know we're going to talk about number 1 quite a bit.
I like number 3. So obviously this is sort of spoilers. We all agree Die Hard 1's the best of the series. I came into this thinking number 3 was the best, and I remember enjoying number 3 the most. So I came into it and talking it up as we were watching the trilogy to my wife, being like, "Oh, wait till you watch With a Vengeance, it'll blow your mind." And then as we were watching, I was like, "Okay, no, it's not as good as the first one. Like this, it's very good and it's better than the second one." But I really enjoy Samuel L. Jackson's character, Zeus. I love the dynamic between those two. Obviously, it's some subjects are a bit touchy and like, especially in a more modern lens. There's some stuff that they wouldn't get away with these days, but some of those scenes in that are just classic. I love the whole cat and mouse like style of movie with Simon Says. I think that's all done well.
Yeah,
Jeremy Irons is awesome as Simon, even though that's like, it's not his main motivation that it's his brother. It's just like a convenient, well, there we go, and that suits my thing, and now I can get all this gold and all that. I like the bombs, man. Just the start of the movie with all the bombs going off in the street. Like, what a cool visual. Like, they start off with a song and then just boom, straight into it. It's such a high budget film. Like, it looks really impressive even now. So yeah, I really enjoy that whole thing.
Yeah, opens with a bang. I was the opposite. I came into this thinking Die Hard 1's obviously the best, and Die Hard 1's always going to be that way. But I enjoyed With a Vengeance a lot more in this rewatch.
Really?
Yeah, I just like I don't know. With the first Die Hard watching it, I was sort of ready for it to end, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm done now. Whereas with A Vengeance, I enjoyed it a lot, and I don't know if that's just because I like sort of those movies we're talking about, the sort of city sprawling movies, or if it's just that I love buddy cop things. But I've got a lot more enjoyment out of With a Vengeance. I think it's probably like Lord of the Rings, Indiana Jones, where I think Raiders is probably the better film, but I enjoyed Last Crusade more. I think the same with this. Die Hard the first one is the better made film. It's superior, but I just enjoyed With a Vengeance more than the original.
Wow.
Wow.
I can't agree with that, but 3 is really good. Do you believe Simon is better than Hans as a bad guy?
No, overall no. I have a soft spot for Jeremy Irons because he's made so many bad films, but he's so good. And so I love seeing him be good because I'm like, I know that's what you could do, man. So seeing him, that's really awesome. And like you're saying, Luke, the Simon Says thing, it's really cool because it's kind of this bizarre added feature that is ultimately a red herring, and so it feels really compelling, and it's like this ultimate rug pull where it's like, okay, this is the motivation. He's playing this huge game for whatever reason, and then it is just like, no, it's all a ruse, and it's so cool. And like that scene, we're on the phone. I met a man from St. Ives, had 7 wives, 7 cats, blah blah blah. That scene is so cool.
Yeah,
the riddle's so.
I love the riddles. It's great. Yeah.
It adds such a flair that makes him such a cool villain. Whereas Hans Gruber is better, but Hans Gruber doesn't have that really, really cool hook where I'm like, wow.
I think the thing separating them, I'll just like Hans Gruber obviously is reacting to John McClane interfering, while Simon's obviously got this plan and he's toying with John McClane with this, and I think that's why it sort of, I don't know, gives him the psychological edge in that. But yeah, Hans is just iconic in my opinion. He's just so good in every scene. And Simon's the same. Like I think he's a standout in number 3 as well. Jeremy Irons is amazing in that. But yeah, what were we going to say, Greiner? Sorry.
Oh, I just think that you say that Hans doesn't have that hook, but I think the hook is that he's going in there, and you think it's this politically motivated thing that he's doing. When you find out he's just there for the money. He's just a thief. He doesn't care about these prisoners. He's trying to get released all around the world. He just read about them in some magazine. Like I think that maybe is a little bit tired now. Like we've seen these villains that have these, like they're putting up this show to hide the fact that they're just there to steal something. But I think that was clever then, and I think that makes him really compelling.
Yeah, I don't mean to. I'm not trying to poo-poo Alan Rickman or Hans Gruber. I think he's great.
I think you are though.
It's because he's dead, isn't it? If he wasn't dead, we wouldn't be having this conversation. No, I think he's awesome. And again, I'm not gonna. I still think Die Hard 1 it would be objectively the better film. Samuel L. Jackson, man, how can you say no to Samuel L. Jackson? Teaching kids, like, go to school, don't take stolen radios to my shop.
And don't trust
Yeah,
white
don't
people.
trust white people.
Don't trust, like, that's the lesson that I've been living every day. It's paid off for me.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson is great. Zeus is a really good character. He's a lot of fun. He's a lot like John in that he doesn't really want to be there. He's along for the ride because he has to be, because he has a heart of gold. He's doing the right thing, even though it's not what he wants to be doing.
Yeah, and I like how it just sort of brings in that element of racial tension and doesn't really focus on it. It's not like racial tension is the main thing that John has to come over, but it just kind of adds this strange thing of like this black guy and this white guy, and they're sort of like they have to work together, but there is this sort of like unspoken bit of like hostility, but they overcome that.
I don't know. It was weird. I think it was weird. A weird
Stood
approach
out
to racism. Like they're definitely trying to make it out that Samuel L. Jackson is the racist guy in the relationship, and I don't think that plays under a modern lens at all. But I don't know. That was weird to me. It was a bit weird to me.
Fair enough.
I mean, that's fine. That's fine. Like, especially in that era, I think it's fine, to have that storyline, because I know why wouldn't he have like this prejudice about stuff that's happening in his neighborhood and stuff that he's experienced. It's fine to do that, but it definitely, to have like the white cop accusing him of being racist and like I don't know, it doesn't play well in 2020.
In 2020, it's a bit of a weird plot.
But it's their chemistry's together is good. Like, as crazy as that opening scene is, like the first Simon Says game that he gets him to do in Harlem, like that is like a very memorable scene, and you feel it as soon as like he turns around. You're like, oh man, this is bad. Like this isn't going to end well for anybody. And it definitely gives it seriousness. And the fact that he does, he helps him because he does have like a heart of gold, and he tells his kid, call the cops. Someone's about to get killed, and he goes and he does help him. So yeah,
it engaged with the dialogue. I think that's valuable, even if 25 years ago it's different. It's not as hasn't aged perfectly. It engaged with the dialogue at the time. I think that's something to give it credit for. All Die Hard 1 did was perpetuate the stereotype that Germans are Nazis.
And the Japanese are buying everything.
Who's the racist now?
There's definitely some strange Japanese.
I think they diverted a lot of expectations with number 1, like cops are meant to eat donuts, not Twinkies.
And that cops, killing kids is something to be overcome.
He shouldn't have a gun. He shouldn't be allowed. He shot a kid. Just like practice on that a bit. Ow.
Yeah.
Just want to appreciate how bad did John McClane look at the beginning of number 3. Like that man, I don't know. He just looked terrible. Like
we
several
could all
hangovers
relate.
deep or something like that. Like that's the part that ages well in 2020, right? Like that's the part we can all relate to today.
I just love the recurring thing where every time he stops for a breather, he needs aspirin because he's just got this killer headache. That's great. He would just he would absolutely hate his life, and it adds to that whole like he's just got a heart of gold. He's motivated. He's like, no, I'm not gonna vomit over here. I was like, I've got to race to the next bomb. What a legend.
So both number 1 and 3 have the bad guy putting on a fake American accent to hide their real accent. Who did it better? Who did it better, Hans or Simon?
I got to give it to Simon.
Really?
Luke, you and
That
I,
American,
yeah, we're opposites, man.
that American accent, that was the thing that just stood out to me about Jeremy Irons in the third movie, is that American accent just is not fooling anybody.
I agree. I was like, I was like,
I
that's
don't
the
know.
worst
I
Southern-
found
I don't know what it
Hans
is.
like, obviously I'm way in the minority here, but I like that scene and I like Hans doing it, but I don't know. It seems like I don't know. I feel like John McClane should see through it, and I feel like he does. Obviously, he gives him an
But he
empty
did-
gun. He
he
does
did
see through it. And I don't know. I don't think Simon fully explored the depths of his acting range with that American accent. He only had to trick that cop, but
True.
I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
It wasn't super bad as far as I'm concerned.
Greiner.
I just really enjoyed that scene where Hans is pretending to be a civilian, pretending to be someone who's lost. Like, I really enjoy him trying to trick John, and that's such a good scene.
That's the
Yeah.
thing. That I think that scene's way more iconic. Like it's definitely a highlight of the movie. I really enjoy, and like I was waiting for it to come up, and I do enjoy it, and especially that it doesn't fool John. You know, like he does see through it, but plays along, sort of thing. And yeah, Alan Rickman is great. But yeah,
I do wonder with Jeremy Irons how much of it is like if he's actually trying to do an American accent or if he's like I'm doing a terribly done American accent. So like maybe it's actually the best performance ever, not the worst. I don't know. I'd have to talk
exactly.
to him.
It's subtle. It's a subtle
But
art.
the accent's awful. Like it doesn't sound American at all. It sounds so bad.
It sounds so strange.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's just give a final ups to the original Die Hard then, since it is the best one, despite Conan not completely agreeing.
So yeah, it's the best one. Like, there's so many aspects
Mainstream.
of it. I love the whole Christmas party vibe and everything. There's so many good one-liners in it that you can quote. Even simple things like, fist with your toes. I know it's always stuck with me. It's just always been like a thing. The whole
I always
theme
think
and
about
event.
that when I've been on a flight. Like,
Yeah.
I always think about I'm gonna get to my room and take my shoes off and make a fist with my toes.
Well, I don't. I keep my shoes on in case something like that happens. I don't have to run through glass. But I don't know. I think Ellis is great, and that whole I love Ellis. He's such a dirtbag. Totally reminds me of
I
Steve
wanted to talk about,
Carell. Like his actual
is he
look.
like, is he the slimiest guy in cinema history though? Like he's hitting on Holly in front of John. He's doing coke. He then betrays everyone to turn John into Hans. Like he's just the slimiest character ever.
But he doesn't reveal that Holly is his wife. He pretends he's friends with him, and he's like, "Come on, John boy." It's great. It's he doesn't rat out Holly, and I think that makes him have a heart of gold deep down there, underneath all the cocaine.
No, he's evil. I read in the original script or the draft or something, he was like meant to be a lot more creepy as well. He was meant to be like being borderline like sexual harassing and like really constantly prowling around Holly. And so it's good that they changed that and they, But how do you do cocaine and have your boss walk in on you and just be like, oh, hey, this is the wife of, this is John McClane. He's going to come in. It's like, hey man, you got cocaine
80s.
on your nose still. is that just it? Everyone in the 80s like that
It's
was
the
doing coke
80s.
and the bosses.
He just did a big deal, Hey, but I don't know. Like, it just cracks me up. I love the whole show him the watch. Like, it's a Rolex. Like, yeah, something little we did for her. It's like, it's such a classic douchebag, slimy character.
From the first moment, you're just counting down until he gets. I mean, you're hoping John obviously just punched him in the face. So when he gets his head shot off, it's like, oh, even better.
I just love where he's sucking up to Hans. He's like, Hans, booby, I'm your white knight.
I'm your white knight. I love it. And he's so confident going into it, just like the little nods, like with the walkie-talkie, like, I'll act along, like, John, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill me, John. It's just like, and Hans is totally like, yeah, I'm going to kill you in a second. I'm like,
yeah, Hans doesn't seem to be buying it for a second, which is fun too.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a lot of small details in this movie too, like the two FBI agents are both named Johnson, so it's like, hi, I'm Agent Johnson. This is Special Agent Johnson. No relation. Or he's on the phone later, he's like, no, the other Johnson. It's just this little thing. Like, they didn't have to do that. It doesn't really add anything to the movie, but it's just so much fun.
Man, that's okay. So talking about like great lines and just like the cop in that has this the same thing with number 2, where you dislike him because he's just not listening. But some of the lines that he says in that just crack me up every time. Just like, oh man, we're gonna need some more FBI guys. He like says it so seriously, like we're gonna need some more of them because they're gone. And the whole, man, I really hope that wasn't a hostage. As Hans falls out of the building. It's just, there's some great lines in there with that. I love that in the credits, the two Johnsons are labeled as Big Johnson and Small Johnson.
Brilliant.
I don't know which was which, but
up for the debate. Those little details there was a bunch of them that really do make the film. Like even the opening scene is a really solid way of like showing that John McClane is very vulnerable. Like he's afraid of flying, and he's just kind of like, he's not just suave from the get go. The first thing we know about it is he has weaknesses. Is that but he's adaptable. He takes advice. He figures it out. I'm like, it's just a really good way to set up a character from the first second of the footage. And just build him as an everyman. I do have a nitpick where there is a scene in the middle. His singlet changes from white singlet that is stained brown to just being a store-bought brown singlet. They thought they could get that past me. They didn't. Lazy.
I love the singlet though. It was just, I don't know, just such a good vision of how dirty and disgusting this man is by the end of that movie. And Holly still embraces him, which I don't understand. But... yeah,
I don't think anyone's kissing that in real life. I do just love seeing character degradation in anything, like just watching a character get like a busted eye and like cuts and bruises.
Yeah.
And just, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for the Die Hard discussion. Now, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. Democracy has failed us in this podcast. We cannot come up with a unanimous decision on what film trilogy to do next. So we've decided to turn to a dictatorship, and we're just going to pick a movie and the others have to live with it every week. So Conan, take it away. What movie trilogies are we doing next week?
So we're taking a break from the overtly mainstream. We're going to mix it up with a little bit of art house.
Editor Greiner here, just ducking in to let you know that due to an internet outage, we were unable to do the Before trilogy like we planned. Instead, we're doing the original X-Men trilogy. So that's X-Men, X2, and X-Men Last Stand.
I'm excited. They're great films.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Well, thank you for joining us on The Good, the Bad, and the Worst. Make sure you catch us on socials and subscribe and rate us and all those good things. And we'll catch you next time.
Yippee-ki-yay, mother.
Peace.